Hi, my name is John Kim, and I'm a therapist who went through his own rebirth. I share my feelings and revelations. I believe in casual over clinical and with you instead of at you. I come unrehearsed on purpose because self-help doesn't have to be so complicated. I'm super excited about my guest today. We actually co-facilitated a retreat together in Bali. That's where I met him, and his name is Lance Allred. I like to call him Lance Allred. See what I did there? Growing up in the 80s. Anyway, if you don't know, I'm a huge fan of people's stories, and I find one's character arc very beautiful. And I don't know if it's the screenwriter in me, but I gravitate toward people who have gone somewhere, gone through something, people who have made their way through their hero's journey. And I think that's how we learn, right? It's through each other's stories. This guy has an amazing story. He has one of the most colorful, amazing stories I've ever heard. So I'm not going to say anything about him. I'm going to let him tell you his story. So enjoy Lance Allred. Hey, Lance. Thanks for being on my podcast.
Good to be here, John. Thanks for having me, man.
So I met Lance at a retreat in Bali, and we had an interesting time because we were the only men, right, in the retreat, and also we were the two people leading the groups.
Yes, we were the coaches, and that was very interesting.
And also, I tend to be on the shorter side, and Lance tends to be on the taller side.
It was an interesting dynamic that you and I had as far as the way we led the groups. And if you had told me a year ago that I would be coaching women at retreats, I would have said doesn't sound very likely.
Right.
But the niche that I've been falling into has been more. I still do my keynotes and corporate training and stuff like that, but more moving into retreat-based focused work. And I think you'll agree, it's actually much more intimate and actually more emotionally fulfilling for me. And so having you there was fun.
Yeah, definitely. I really liked, and I'm so happy that you were there so I could also participate in your groups as well, and I think that's what was kind of cool about the retreat is we led but also participated.
Yeah, no, it was fun. But that's why I liked you as well too, because we have so many quote unquote gurus and influencers out there, and too many people always posturing, wanting to act like they're in charge or they're superior. But the fact that you and I were actually able to be students in each other's groups is just good for us in our work, but also it helps the groups be more vulnerable as well.
Yeah, that's what I noticed about you right away was your vulnerability and your courage to just show up. And so I knew instantly that you weren't just wearing the t-shirt, and so that's also another reason why I want you on my podcast. So I am a big fan of stories, and in hearing your story, I really think you have one of the most interesting stories I've ever heard. So this idea of people in their character arcs and finding beauty in our character arcs, and because I used to be a screenwriter, I just naturally gravitate toward that. So with your story, and yet so many pieces to this, where do you want to start? I mean, we could Quentin Tarantino this and start with the first deaf person in the NBA and then go backwards, or it doesn't have to be linear, but
well, I would say, let's, the immediate claim to fame that I always get is I couldn't play basketball with my hearing aids in due to sweat and concussion issues.
Right.
And so with the 80% hearing loss, I became the first legally deaf player in the NBA when I joined the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2008. And from there, as people began to hear the story, other bits and pieces started to leak out in the news as people started doing the research. And they found out that I was actually born and raised in a polygamous commune in rural Montana.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in a very extreme religious cult, really, is what we would call it. And raised in my grandfather's dream of a utopian society that believed that if we were righteous enough, we can make Jesus come again. And so very extreme, ultra conservative religious community that taught us that if we wanted to be in the highest degree of glory in heaven, we had to have at least 3 wives.
Right.
And that was one of the founding principles of Joseph Smith, the founder of the current mainstream Mormon LDS Church. Though the current Mormon Church, the mainstream church, does not practice polygamy, polygamy is very much history, and a lot of people will deny it. But so I grew up in the world of martyrdom, as my grandfather was literally killed for his beliefs, and the stories of, the best man wins.
Right.
The most alpha man gets all the women to marry him, and so. Even though we claim to be a very religious or spiritual community, it was very much a what's the word? It's more than dogmatic. Dogmatic applies to the religious, but it was more of the very achievement-based culture.
Yeah. How because I really want to pull the curtain back. I think a lot of people have conceptions about what polygamy is. How do you pick the what is an arrangement, or how does that work when it comes to the marriages?
Some of them were arranged. My parents were in arranged marriage.
Mm,
Especially in a few decades back, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there were a lot of arranged marriages.
right.
But it's in every paradigm, there's always going to be a sliding scale. And so in my grandfather's religious commune, the AUB, or the Apostolic United Brethren, while we were very conservative as opposed to the rest of the world, in the sliding scale of the paradigm of polygamy, we were actually more liberal than most. In that, my grandfather had us all, or asked us all, to dress like normal people, go work in the real world, and bring back all your money. And that's why he was the wealthiest, and he was killed for his money. In that he didn't just put us in a little house in the prairie attire and put us behind chain link fences like you see the Jess group down in Short Creek. And the Allreds and the Jeff split back in the early 40s, so there's connection there. But my grandfather was savvy. And it's funny, as I've come to know more and more about my grandfather, he actually, every year, he would churn out a book, have a ghostwriter write it for him, and use it to convert more people and followers.
Wow.
So, John, I think you and I know that sounds like an early model to what a lot of quote-unquote influencers use today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's interesting how my grandfather was actually ahead of that trend, because a lot of the authors that we know don't actually write their own books. They have ghostwriters doing it for them. And so my grandfather was actually pretty savvy in that way, but there's a lot of misconceptions about polygamy as well, in that everyone thinks that the men are sex fiends.
Yeah. There's this weird locker room fantasy about like, I could have multiple wives and what that's like. But I mean, the reality is that's not easy.
No, it's not, because you and I are. Both of our transitions came from the pain of a divorce, and we know how hard it is to keep one marriage fulfilled.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine the emotional energy it would take to be in multiple marriages with different women.
And so the misconception, because one, TV goes for the sensationalist, that you see so many books and documentaries about the horrors that women go through, and while this is true, is only a small sample.
Right.
Because you're going to have your 20% of deviance, like you do in every culture. But because it's so different that people are drawn to it, and they want to hear the horror stories, they don't often pay attention to the men.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom will tell you, when she was in a polygamous marriage with my father before the second wife left, I'm the youngest of all my father's children. And so I only remember my father to be monogamous. The second wife left shortly after I was born, but my mom will tell you that for the 8 years they were in a polygamous marriage, while she obviously had to just suppress a lot of emotions and anxiety, and she'll tell you she became severely anorexic because of it. She had a lot of health concerns come from that suppression. She also tells you that she found a silver lining in that the night that my father went to the other wife's home, she was able to then say, okay, this is my night to myself.
Right.
I get to do what I want to do. I can watch what I want to watch or do whatever I want to do in the house and not have to worry about the husband coming home and making sure that everyone's set and happy. She got to have her own space to do what she wanted. Whereas my father and my uncles, who I watched growing up, every night they were on.
Yeah, of course.
They had no nights off. They had to go to another home every night, fix a problem, fix a leaking sink, do some handiwork around the house, and then deal with the kids' issues. And so he's always on. And imagine it's just like every house, you're gone for 2 or 3 nights. There's just a growing list of chores every night that when you're not there are being added on to. And it takes its toll.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's so predictable. Well, I mean, just really predictable how society just goes straight to the sex part, and sex is. I mean, it's important, but it's such a small part of a marriage. You know, it's one part.
Yeah, it is a small part. And my parents will tell you, in this culture, there was only sex for the means of procreation.
Right. So it's not it's not the fantasy.
Wasn't a lot of sex.
Yeah, it's not the fantasy that people play in their heads.
No, it's not. And so therefore, I mean, even though he had 2 wives, my dad got a lot less action than I ever did. So
I'm going to totally date myself, but it's like Mr. Roper or Mr. Furley, the landlord, just always fixing shit every year.
Yeah, always, all the time. Right. And also think about the mind games that are involved, that the wife knows you're going to wife number 2 tomorrow night.
I can't imagine.
So is she really going to be open and vulnerable and intimate with you?
Right.
And even if she is letting you have sex, is the sex really fulfilling? Is it intimate? Is it connecting? Not really. And so when a lot of people can look at it, they can fantasize about it, as you said. But as we do with all things in relationships, we can fantasize about a monogamous marriage. But once you actually hit the nitty gritty, you're like, wait, this isn't anything close to what I was expecting.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. How did all that form your definitions of love growing up and, you know, your whole transition?
Yeah, that's a heavy question.
I mean, it must have been confusing.
See.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very, very confusing because, well, one, it taught me that love was a very conditional term. That when my father blew the whistle on child abuse and money laundering, we went into hiding when I was 13. His whole family disowned us, and we had to go into hiding. And that's it taught me that, you know, blood doesn't really mean things as far as, hey, will people choose blood and family, or would they choose their stories and comfort zones of their paradigm?
Right.
They usually choose their stories. And so in that compounded what was already a growing internal narrative of what love and intimacy was, in that as a boy, I saw the women usually gravitate to the men who had the most power or the up-and-comers. And let's go back even further in history, that the Mormon church, mainstream church, tells a narrative about Joseph Smith, the founder, and how he allowed for polygamy by saying that there were just more women converts than men at the very beginning stages of the church's development in 1840s. And that's actually not true. There were just as many men as there are women at that time. But what you saw, again, was women choosing to hitch their wagon to the man that could most likely provide for them and their children, and the man that was going to have the most influence and power in the church as he rose through the ranks.
So it's more of a status thing.
It was a status thing.
Yeah.
And for some, they would say, oh, it was a religious, spiritual thing, because I want to be the man who's most spiritual and connected to God, right? But that still is a status thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a boy, I was taught that status and power meant intimacy,
Yeah.
meant love.
Meant that you would be loved.
Yes, exactly. And so it was a very much an achievement-based motherboard that I was operating from, that said I have to do this and do this, and I have to achieve great things before I can receive love. And now, John, as you know, you don't have to grow up in polygamy for many men to have this distorted illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, deeply and early embedded into their subconscious and their psyche in our Western society and culture. And that, we have a lot of confusion, especially right now in the aftermath of the apex of the Me Too movement, that you have a lot of women saying they want equality, which is within their rights and very reasonable to demand. And you also have the Hollywood movies that men are dragged to on their dates, the romantic movies where the women say they want intimacy, they want the men to be vulnerable. Yet at the same time, we saw growing up, and we still see growing up, a lot of women choosing the man who might not be very good looking, but he has money.
Mm.
And that's very confusing for a lot of men right now.
Yeah, I think both men and women have been programmed, especially in our society, to tie our worth to performance, achievement, ability, all of that stuff. And so
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what you're getting at, men and women, is actually a team effort. And so women demanding that men change, but not giving men compassion and patience at the same time to help us learn what vulnerability is and what intimacy is. It takes time. And those are hard things to undo, because even after we broke away from polygamy, John, at the age of 13, I still had this story that I had to do something amazing
right,
with my life
to be worthy.
to be worthy of love
Right.
from God or from another woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we transitioned out of polygamy, I lost all my cousins who had been my best friends. And there I was at a new school. I grew that year from 5'10" to 6'4" and didn't have any friends. And the coach saw me walking down the hall one day, and he's like, hey, you come play basketball. You're tall. I'm like, sure. Okay, fine. I didn't have any basketball skills. I was a writer and a Dungeons and Dragons kid growing up. Right.
Right.
And, so I figured, okay, let's give this basketball thing a shot. It's a good way for me to fit in.
So you were more artist and athlete.
Oh, absolutely. I with all the books I've written and everything, I won writing awards when I was a kid in elementary, and I was the very shy and introverted. I was in speech therapy till I was 16. I had to learn to read first, and then I'd watch people read back. So I learned to read their lips that way.
Wow.
In rural Montana, where I was born, there were no amenities to learn sign language. So I had to learn to speak and read lips, and thousands and thousands of hours of speech therapy. But in that time, very shy and introverted. And my parents encouraged me to, again, read, but also write, to communicate and express myself. And so through that, I was always much more of a writer. And I tell people now, I was a writer who played basketball. I wasn't a basketball player who also happened to write.
Right.
And so I loved writing. It's how I always expressed myself. And so when I began playing basketball, organized basketball for the first time in 8th grade, I wasn't good at first at all. I was awful, actually. And I was ejected my first game because the ref thought I was ignoring him when I just couldn't hear him.
Right.
And right then, people were saying, oh, yeah, no, he's too deaf. He can't do this. But I'm incredibly stubborn. There were many motivations as to why I wanted to and did make the NBA. And that first, I actually found that I did like playing basketball. I enjoyed it. and I wanted to make money playing basketball. And there are lots of things, but also spite. Spite's always a good motivation, but if it's your only motivation, then it's empty calories. To
Right.
me, spite is like the last gallon of gasoline in your trunk
Mm-hmm.
that you had that you need just to help you get over the finish line. That's what it can be channeled for, and it's good when you use it that way. But really, the greatest motivator looking back, and I'm honest now when I share the stage, was fear.
Yeah, for sure.
Fear that if I didn't
Fear
make
of what?
fear of failure, fear that if I didn't make the NBA, I wouldn't be worthy of love.
Mm.
That, yeah, again, even though we broke away from polygamy, I had that deeply embedded story of worth in my subconscious.
So the theme is fighting for or proving to yourself that you deserve love. So everything kind of hanging on that.
Yes,
Yeah.
basically. And that was very much the story that drove me, that character arc that you're asking about. And so through a long, crazy story and journey, yeah, I made my scholarship to the University of Utah in 1998, the year that Utah lost to Kentucky in a national championship game. It was a big program at the time, and I loved my coach there, but his mother got cancer my sophomore year, and he began to unravel, and I share compassion, and that I see his own fear now looking back. But he began to unravel, and one day he called me a disgrace to cripples, and if I was in a wheelchair and I saw you play basketball, I'd shoot myself, and
Wow.
and that broke my heart, and I ended up going to Weber State after that, ready to quit. I really thought I had no value because I thought I had failed, and I thought I was just going to go to Weber State and graduate and maybe go be a teacher or something. I didn't know. But then before my senior year started, I actually went on medication for PTSD and also something called scrupulosity. I think you might know of. It's just a form of OCD that is religious based, where I actually hit it from the time I was 13, because when we broke away from polygamy, it began to emerge. I was going through puberty and my body was going through changes. And the last Sunday school lesson I got in this all polygamous group said that homosexuality is the greatest sin in the world. And homosexuality is the greatest sin in the world, and masturbation leads to homosexuality. And so there I am going through puberty. My life is completely turned upside down. All my cousins, my best friends are gone, new school. And I remember I was sitting next to a really pretty girl in 8th grade, the first day of school at the new school. And she's wearing a skirt. And I see these legs. I'm like, wow, she's really pretty. And I feel like this sensation in my body.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, no, what's this urge I want to do? Oh, my gosh, why do I want to touch myself? Oh, my gosh. And it's like a switch that flips in your head that, oh, my gosh, does that mean I'm gay? Because I wanted to pleasure myself because I'm natural, I'm a human. And it's completely illogical and ridiculous. But that's the thing about OCD and branches of it, is that most of us know these thoughts are ridiculous and irrational, but we just can't stop thinking about them and obsessing about them.
Well, also those thoughts are also aligned with shame.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And so my compulsion was I would sneak out of class and just go pray in the bathroom. I'd pray like 10, 12 times a day at school saying, please, God, please don't be angry with me.
Oh, wow.
But at the same time, I began to play basketball. So I was able to channel a lot of it into basketball and just hide a lot of neuroses. And so my teammates and my coaches always thought I was really intense, and I was. But I still had this story that, I had to do something amazing and God would be proud of me. So, like, truly, every made or missed shot in my head had eternal ramifications. That's how much pressure I put on myself.
Yeah, everything was life or death, or everything was heaven or hell.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And so And, I have great people that ask me after my speeches and keynotes, they ask me the great question, well, if you didn't have that fear, do you think you would have made the NBA? And it's a fair question. I can't answer it honestly, because hindsight is not actually 2020, even though people like to say it is. It's actually chain reaction. And what I mean by that is I used to do this thing and beat myself up every night after a game and say, oh, if only I'd made that easy layup in the second quarter, I would have had 20 points tonight instead of 18. But it wasn't until I was like 30 years old that one night while I was lying in bed, beating myself up, I had a thought that was like, well, if I had made that easy layup, they would have had to stop the play, inbound the ball, and run a completely different play at the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they made or missed it, we would have had to respond accordingly. And then they would have had, so it's just chain reaction. So who's to say I would have even touched the ball for the rest of the night?
Yeah, it's the butterfly effect.
It's the butterfly effect. So that's the best way to say what hindsight is. And so when people say hindsight is 2020, that's actually very incorrect. And so to answer the question, if I didn't have that fear, would I have made the NBA? I honestly can't. I can't answer it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I see it in its perfect place.
In a way, it doesn't matter. That's not your story, right?
It's not my story.
So,
and go ahead.
So from there, how did you? Now
at the Weber State part, yeah, you were asking that. From there, so it's interesting. So the mental health thing, it's funny. Well, John, you're a therapist and you deal with people who have so much shame about mental health, and it's ridiculous because I remember one day once I was diagnosed and went on medication, I went and talked to my coach, Coach Cravens at Weber State. And I remember I felt so much shame and I was embarrassed. I told him, Coach, I'm so sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for. And he was just so confused. And he looked at me and said, Lance, you needing medication for your OCD, it's the same as your teammate Brad needing insulin for diabetes. And he gave me that space and that permission to not have shame. And it's so funny, John, that here we live in a world where if someone says, oh, I'm on antibiotics for my liver that I shot last week because I went on a bender, we'll say, oh, bless you, I hope you get better. But if we say, oh, I want a medication because of a serotonin imbalance in my brain, it's too bad you're just not tough enough or strong enough to deal with it naturally. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of judgment with meds and all of that stuff.
It is. And it's ridiculous because our brain is our most important organ along with the heart. And yet we're thinking, oh, you need help with it? Oh, you're just weak. And it makes no sense at all. But because of that loyalty and compassion from that coach, I mean, I wanted to give him all I could, but he also gave me the courage to start thinking big again. I started writing down my goals, and every goal I've written down and put above my light switch. And every time I touch the light switch, I read it out loud. Every goal I've done that with for over a year has come true in some way, shape, or form. Does it look like what I thought it was going to look like? No, but it comes true. And I started doing that again. And so
I like what you just said, that those goals have come true, but they didn't necessarily look like what you thought they were going to look like.
No.
And I think that's another great misconception, that when people are visualizing and they have goals, that they think it's going to be a carbon copy of what you see. And usually the way that life works, it's like the goals are achieved, but they manifest in a different way.
They do. And what you talk about is an expectation. Learning to say, I'm going to set a goal and I'm going to chase it as though I'm on fire. But I'm also going to learn to detach from what it's supposed to look like. And that's a hard thing to do. That's a hard skill to learn. And that takes time. And it takes enough heartbreaks eventually that once you learn, I'm like, okay, I'm going to achieve it. And I'm going to allow it to look like what it needs to look like. And so I started writing down my goals, and they were Lance Allred will average 18 points and 12 rebounds a game my senior year. I'll lead the nation in rebounding. I'll be the first legally deaf player in the NBA. And And I did all of them. And at the end of my senior year, I led the nation in rebounding. When my season was over, two brilliant basketball players, Paul Millsap and Andrew Bogut, both passed me up in the NCAA tournament after my season was over. And I went from number 1 to number 3, and I only got one NBA workout, and that was to go practice with the Utah Jazz because someone had missed their flight. And I wasn't drafted. Because it was like, oh, he went to a smaller school, Weber State, even though, that's where Damian Lillard come from. Weber State's a great school for basketball players. Then I went over to Istanbul, and the crazy story there, I mean, I know we only have 40 minutes. I'm trying to take too much time, but let's just say there was a point in Istanbul I was running around with $20,000 in my pocket, and someone was chasing me down the back streets of the Grand Bazaar.
Wow.
And, wait, I thought I was a professional basketball player. I don't know what this is, but this ain't basketball. Why do I feel like I'm in a Jason Bourne movie?
Yeah.
And I then went over to Spain and then injured my knee in Spain. And the team there said that was a pre-existing condition. And so I came home my very first year as a pro basketball player, broke, in debt, in the red. And from there, I took a landscaping job just to get through the summer while I rehabbed my knee. And then I got one call 6 months later to go try out for the minor league team for the Utah Jazz, the Idaho Stampede. And that contract was $1,100 a month as a pro basketball player.
Wow.
And I only got that job, turns out to be the token media guy at the end of the bench that they thought wasn't really good enough to play. And so it was like, yeah, let's go send our deaf guy to go do all the communication work, right? And, I had a choice there. I was like, I could say, F this is stupid, I'm better than this, or it was fine. I'm going to learn how to do a radio interview. I'll learn how to do public speaking to kids at schools. And those skills allow me to transition out of basketball and make more money than I ever did as a basketball player.
So that actually became the bridge, huh?
It did. That's where I learned those skills.
And what's really interesting is I think that's the difference. I think between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And a lot of people, if you had a fixed mindset and also a lot of pride, you wouldn't have done that, and then you wouldn't have gotten the soil or the practice to do what you're doing now.
Yeah, and that's what I love sharing with people when I speak to companies, that we're all going to be pigeonholed. You've been pigeonholed, you're going to be minimized, and people just aren't going to see your value because they don't want to. And you can pout about it, or you can understand that they're giving you the tactical advantage when they underestimate you.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks they're entitled to respect right away.
You gotta earn it. You gotta build it. You gotta pull your sleeves up. So my version of that was after therapy school and a master's and all of that, being thrown into nonprofit, and I had a lot of resistance and a lot of ego and not wanting to do that because that's not what I thought a therapist looked like. I imagined the private practice and the wrinkle-free pants and all that. But it was in the trenches working with teenagers where I came up with a lot of concepts, and then learning to run groups. Like all that happened in those 5 years. And, that I could relate to your story of how being the end guy at the bench repositioned you and gave you the tools to launch yourself now, or these days.
It did. And at the time I didn't quite see it because I still like, hey, I'm learning these skills. I know they'll come in handy someday, but also this is kind of what I have to do right now if I want to stick on the team. And I know I just got to stick around long enough. And that's the thing about underdogs. If you stick around long enough, the tables will go your way. But you have to play into the fourth quarter. But most people quit by halftime.
Yeah.
And my little joke that I get to share with people, in every allowed arena, everyone's deaf. And so in the land of temporary deafness, the fourth quarter, the permanently deaf man is king. Because I'm used to not being able to hear things, so I don't get rattled. But again, you have to play into the fourth quarter.
Right.
But most people they're so conditioned to the illusions of instant success, instant gratification, that once they get punched in the face one time, they think, okay, I guess I have to stop. My dreams aren't coming true. That's not, you and I know that's not the way the world works.
Yeah.
Even though you have so many people out there selling courses and stuff like that, and time hacks and cheat sheets, and so yeah. So I'll just ask you, John. What is the average age of an NBA rookie?
Oh, I'm gonna say young. I don't know, but 25.
The 25 is actually pretty old. It's not 19 or
Wow.
20.
Oh, wow.
19 or 20 when they're drafted as freshmen out of college.
Yeah.
And I was 27 when I made the NBA. And so that's 7 extra years longer than the average rookie.
Yeah.
And yeah, everyone thinks that things should happen easy. And so we have all these illusions of social media, of people selling quick fixes, but they're not real. And like what you had to do, going back to school and having the resolve, but also the humility to say, yeah, I'm older. I'm in my 30s. I'm going through a crisis here.
Hmm.
I'm going to go kind of just have a renaissance about myself and go back to school and learn new things. That takes a lot of courage to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not a lot of people are willing to do that. Because it also was you admitting, yeah, this is like a 5-year project. It's not just going to be something that happens overnight.
Right, and I think especially today, with the internet technology, it's programming all the kids coming up to have little patience, and
Yes.
everything's delivered now, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's a sense of entitlement. And what people don't understand is, I mean, they see the tip of the iceberg, but they don't see the rest of it underneath the water, you know. And so
No.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like people don't know. Like for me, I put my head down and I blogged for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just that's all I did.
Yeah.
And
Right.
before that, I wrote, 10 screenplays and all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
all they see is, one book deal or the recent book deal, and they think like, oh,
Instant success.
yeah, he must have got that because whatever, and it's no, like I think that everything else is what produces all the stuff that comes later.
Yeah, no, it does. It absolutely does. And the funny thing is that so many people are trying to avoid heartache. They're
Hmm.
trying to avoid heartbreak and disenchantment and failure when we know those are the greatest teachers.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so I find it funny when you have all these relationship coaches out there trying to help us avoid heartbreak. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
and that that's the thing about divorce is when you are divorced, the world easily stamps defective, or they feel like,
yeah.
well, if you couldn't fix your marriage, what makes you think you could fix someone else's? But actually,
Hmm.
divorce is what creates that soil for you to look back into the black box and actually learn about,
Learn.
yeah, about why the plane went down and how to build a better
Exactly.
one.
Exactly. And you being able to say, yeah, you're right. I'm actually humble enough to share with you my mistakes and what I learned from my mistakes to
Hmm.
help you. And that takes a lot to do. And that's a far more effective teacher than perfection.
Yes.
But the thing is, that's not real perfection. Real perfection is not pretty. And that real perfection is the constant striving and failing, but getting back up and finessing your craft. That it doesn't just happen naturally, that it takes failure. And my favorite thing, I love to push back against a lot of the new age movement, the law of attraction, all that
Hmm.
stuff. And,
Hmm.
just float downstream, path of least resistance.
Right.
It's like, no, that's not real, because let's think about it as a basketball player. If I said I wanted to have the best season of my life, I then have to train and have
Yeah.
resistance and opposition
Right.
and discomfort and pain. And as I build up stamina and endurance, that then prepares me that when game time comes, that I can withstand all opposition.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I just say, oh, I'm going to wish it because the law of attraction says I can have it, and then I don't have to train or do any cardio, you're going to get wiped off the map
Right
when the game starts. And so when people are out there trying to take shortcuts, that's not the way it works. And that is an entitlement, as you said. And entitlement's a vicious disease when you think you can have something without actually earning it.
And you know what? This also applies to relationships. I think so many
Yes.
people, especially because of the Disney movies and how media portrays love and all of that. I mean, even like shows like The Bachelor, where
Yeah,
um, relationships take training. It
they
takes
do.
looking inward. It takes so much work, and people think that just because you're attracted to someone, that it should all play out, and that's just the beginning.
It's just the
That's
beginning,
the easy part.
and I'm sure you roll your eyes too when you hear it. But so many people use the term or the expression of soulmate,
Oh
I
yeah,
think, as a way to absolve themselves of accountability in a
sure,
relationship
sure.
by saying, oh, you can't understand why I'm being moody and not communicating today. You're supposed to read my mind because you're supposed to be my soulmate. I shouldn't have to communicate. You should just get me. And that is rampant. And that's the disease of the myth of the soulmate. And the thing I'm most grateful for in this life is something I had to earn, and that's the ability to communicate.
Mm.
And yeah, I see everyone around me saying, I don't want to have to communicate. I just want my soulmate who should just get my mind and take care of all my every need without me having to articulate it. And it's absurd.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah, and they also don't teach us this stuff in school, so we
They
learn.
don't. No,
Yeah, we
they
learn
don't.
through our broken hearts, and so when I meet people who have been through divorce, who have been through Al-Anon meetings and through codependency and all that,
Yes.
it makes me
Hmm.
feel like, oh, they actually have wisdom. It
Yes.
doesn't make me feel like they have failed. It makes me feel
No.
like they have actually love lessons to share.
They do. And not to pat myself on the back, but when you watch my TEDx talk, What is Your Polygamy?
Mm,
If I'm out there showing a mirror to the world, asking them, What is your polygamy? And showing people how we're not very unlike people who practice polygamy, and that we all have our stories and comfort zones of paradigms that allow us to other others, the othering of others by
hmm
making ourselves more important. If I was going to do that and not show the loss and the disenchantment that I've had and the heartbreak that I've had of how my own stories and my own baggage that I brought into my marriage that contributed to the downfall of that marriage, showing what my polygamy was, how have I earned the right to actually be on a stage talking to people about these very tough things to talk about? And as you said, when you meet people that have been through that kind of pain, you know that they have something to offer you.
Yeah.
And we have enough, again, influencers out there who are just really good at regurgitating Wayne Dyer or somebody. But what price have they really paid to be on a stage spouting those words at you? And I think as a society, while some people are not getting better, I think a lot of us are getting better on social media at just feeling someone's energy and
hmm
knowing if they've actually paid a price or not.
I was going to say, I think that's the good news is you can tell if someone has been through a journey or slayed dragons.
Yeah,
The good news is that even though there's a lot of noise and a lot of people wearing the T-shirt, people are also very they could smell bullshit now more than ever.
I agree with you. And
Yeah.
I have found some comfort in that. And while there are some who are slow to smell it, and that's you kind of like, oh, I hope they're going to be okay. There's enough that are starting to figure it out. Because that's what a lot of my message is, in that I'm not this motivational speaker who's out
Yeah.
there telling people, follow my formula and you'll make $1 million next year, and then suddenly you'll be happy.
Right.
I get to say, to finish the arc of my stories, that there was a stretch there while I was doing all the media stuff that I hadn't played in 3 straight weeks, and I was stressed out. I didn't know what was going to happen with my life, making $1,100 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a bleeding ulcer, and my mom called me up and she said, you know, Lance, I'm really proud of you, and you've worked really hard. You don't have to do this to yourself anymore. And why do you keep doing it? And without being a victim or a martyr, I said, Mom, because I choose to,
Mm-hmm.
because it's my choice. It's my choice. And within a week of that phone call, the starting center broke his leg. The starting power forward got bought out, ironically, to go play for the same team in Turkey, the one I played for the year before. I was running around with $20,000 in my pocket.
Right.
And, you know, he asked me, hey, are they safe? I'm like, just be careful with it. But of course, in my head, I'm doing jazz hands. I'm all excited. And the backup center got recalled to his NBA team. He was an NBA signee. And so by default, I was the only big man the team had. And the coaches all freaked out that night as we flew into Bismarck, North Dakota for a game. And he was like, oh, Lance, you know, you haven't played in 3 weeks. Just keep it safe, play smart, you know, and be a good teammate, get 4 or 5 points. And I was already in a good mood because that road trips meant like meal money. So I could actually go buy a $5 footlong from Subway if I was feeling kind of like a big spender, right?
Right.
And so I'm already in a good mood, and I'm like, okay, fine, let's go do this. And that night, the first game on the road as a starter, I gave him 30 points and 10 rebounds.
Wow.
And it was, there I was just sitting on the bench, just waiting for my time. And how was I able to play for 40 straight minutes after not playing for 3 straight weeks? And that it was during practice time, it was my time to do the cardio. That when my teammates were ahead of me on the fast breaks and they didn't need me to run with them, I still ran with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they made the layup, I just went one stride further underneath the baseline, underneath the hoop, and touched the baseline. And, you know, my teammates laughed at me. They said I wasn't being cool. But what is cool never got me anything in my life. And that allowed me to have the stamina and perseverance to play 40 straight minutes and do what I did. And from there, averaged 22 points and 13 rebounds a game for the rest of the season. And shortly after, was called up to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And, you know, the NBA was everything I hoped it to be.
Yeah.
I walk into the locker room. My locker's right next to LeBron. He sees my beat up D-League shoes, minor league shoes, and he says, hey, yo, we don't wear those shoes here. Take a pair of mine. And granted, he had a whole other locker designated for shoes, but he gave me a pair. That was
Right.
nice of him.
Right.
And the food, the perks, I'm never eating ramen noodles ever again. That was my main staple in the minor leagues, eating ramen noodles, moving my 6'11" frame. And but the one thing I most wanted the NBA to be that it could never be, was I was fouled in my first time in the game in Cleveland, Ohio, and I went to shoot a free throw. And I had a thought that came into my head that was, you know, is this it?
Mm.
Is this the best of the guess? I don't feel any difference. Sure, my ego is happy.
Yeah.
But my heart, my gut.
Yeah, your soul.
I still felt empty.
Right.
I still felt I wasn't enough. That if I miss this shot, I'll lose my job and I won't be worthy of love. That constant downward spiral of fear, of worst case scenario, that said, you know, love is conditional. I didn't feel different. And there was severe disenchantment that came in that moment because I finally got to peek behind the curtain of Oz and see, just like any corporation where there's a lot of money involved, the NBA was very corporate as well. And I say that with respect, not disenchantment or anger towards it.
Sure.
But when you chase something with so much altruism, but also putting it on such a pedestal like I did, it's impossible to live up to those expectations.
Yeah.
That we put onto our dreams,
Right.
that we believe will validate us and tell us that we have something to offer the world. And even when I was in the NBA, I went on medication again for depression.
Mm.
The disenchantment that came. But also, as you know, you've been in your field long enough that even when happy things happen, like weddings and big job promotions, your serotonin can get out of balance. And depression can hit you after really positive events.
Right.
And but then later the next season, the economy hit, 2008, the crash, and most NBA teams released their 14th and 15th roster spots, and I was no exception. And I went over to Italy, playing over in Italy, and the team there wasn't paying, and I nearly committed suicide by jumping out of a window of a
Mm.
hotel.
Wait, you mean on purpose, or what do you mean?
On purpose.
Okay, so you
I was,
attempted.
I nearly attempted. I had taken my hearing aids out because at least I want to die in peace, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
luckily, I was sitting on the windowsill about to go, but then I was in a hotel where it was these old clunker rattle phones, and the
Mm.
phone was on the wall, and it vibrated on the wall, and I could feel very well with the other senses kicking in for the loss of hearing. And I knew it was my mom. She just knew.
Yeah.
And I answered, and she knew something was wrong. And I came down from the ledge, and when you're about to do something, it's a serious toll on the nervous system when you're about to do something
Oh,
like
sure.
that.
Yeah.
And that nervous breakdown and breakdown of the nervous system, it took me about 2 years to recover from.
Wow.
Just kind of really going back and checking my stories, checking the thought patterns of my Mormon upbringing that has everything in such a linear based construct that X plus Y equals Z.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do this and I do this, God will bless me. If I do that, I'll be worthy of love. And realizing that's my responsibility. It's not my soulmate's responsibility. It's not the MBA's responsibility. And even while I was working through all that, I still had the story that, oh, someday I'll get married and then I'll really be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn to find the grace in that, and that she is the only person I could have fallen in love with that madly
Mm-hmm.
to get me to be that exposed, to show all the blind spots that I still had.
Yeah.
And
It's so
go
easy
ahead.
to, well, it's all, because I know we're both divorced,
Hmm.
and I'm sure we had, obviously different experiences of that divorce, but it's so easy to see what happened that was bad. But if you could actually see that bad needed to be that needed to
Yes.
happen for you to be exposed or for you to go on your journey,
Yeah.
then it's not bad. It's gold. I mean, yes, it was
It is gold.
painful, but
It's
it's
so painful.
actually, yeah, but it's what brought upon your rebirth or your evolution. So
It did. And so, when you and I were in Bali, I was doing this with the group. It's the dark and light work of being
yeah,
able, on one hand, to hold the pain
right,
and the heartbreak and not diminish it by giving platitudes or silver lining and saying, yeah, it hurts. And on the other hand, saying, in gratitude to her, she's the only person that could have gotten to be that exposed
mm-hmm,
to propel me on such
mm-hmm.
further growth that I otherwise would not have had.
Yeah, what a great! I love that exercise, and what a great reminder for anyone listening, if they are going through pain or they're in a dark time or in a tunnel, because it's very hard to see when you're in the trenches. The other hand, which is
Yeah.
the gratitude of what this can bring about. The seed that
The
this is
lesson.
going to plant. Yeah, the lesson, the gold.
Yes, the gold. And so no, it's always like passing clouds. Some days there's no clouds at all, but some days she's on your mind a lot and it's overcast. And all you can do is just breathe through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just sit there and breathe and let it and acknowledge your feelings and not diminish them. And learning how to feel, and learning that the heart heals the heart. And the brain can help us develop the coping mechanisms to slow ourselves down, to finally just get present and actually be brave enough to face the wounding and the feelings and the hurt. And that takes tremendous strength,
Mm-hmm.
John. And learning to do that over the last 4 years, learning how to grieve, because I came from a culture where I didn't know how to grieve. that ultra religious upbringing, that if you were grieving the loss or the death of somebody, you were showing a lack of faith.
Right.
And so I didn't know how to grieve. And so learning how to grieve in my mid 30s, and going through this process, retiring from basketball to be with my son, transitioning careers, not knowing what the hell I was doing by doing the whole motivational, inspirational speaker thing, just winging it, and doing all of that while going through the pain of a divorce and learning how to grieve. I'll tell anyone, I'm not being flippant, it's not hyperbole, but learning how to grieve and actually be brave enough to face my feelings was harder than making the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for that. And I want to end there because that's such a powerful statement. One of the things I love doing is shattering veneers, and I love that in this episode we shattered so many veneers from, what it looks like to be an NBA player, especially or in that world, especially because the outside world sees the NBA or hears the word NBA or the letters and they think Ferraris and groupies and all of that.
Yeah.
But that's not always truth. And also, shattering the veneer on polygamy, shattering the veneer on this concept of the one and all of that. So I think your story does that. And I think that's why it's so powerful. And, I was going to ask you at the end what your definition of man or the new man is, but I actually don't want to because I feel like you've demonstrated it. I think it's easy to say, well, here's my definition, and go down a checklist. I think it's actually more powerful and harder to actually show up in those shoes. And I think in the last hour, you not only sharing your story, but the way that you are and the way that you are being, which is also something I witnessed at the retreat, is your definition. Is that instead of announcing it, you are actually demonstrating it in action.
Well, thank you, John. That's one of the best compliments I've ever received. So thank you.
Yeah, there's an authenticity about you that is undeniable, and I think you've earned it through your character arc.
Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate it. That means a lot, man. And I love the fact that you're out there, and that you and I, it's fun that we kind of hold the edges together. That we're not opposites, but we have just different energies that allow us to navigate and chip away, as you say, at the veneer of things from our respective ends. And it's good symbiosis. And so I'm glad I get to call you a friend and a peer.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that too. And I'm a visual person, and the visual I see is the picture that we took in Bali where we're on that we're on these little swings. That's and we're connected by we're holding hands, which I love because men don't hold hands, but we're holding hands, and then it's just shot from the back, I always see that photo when I think about you. Let us know what you're doing now and where we can find you.
Okay. What am I doing now? So I have a couple of retreats coming up. I have another one at the hot springs in Montana, Sleep and Child Hot Springs. You can find out about it on my Instagram at Lance Allred 41, or my website, lanceallred41.com. But also my new book, the new Alpha Male, is coming out with Macmillan and Sounds True Publishers in March of 2020, and I'd love to come back on and talk with you about that.
Yeah, for sure.
And we can talk about a lot of the stuff that our books cover about what is actual masculinity. And so that'll be fun to come back and talk about that with you in a few months.
Awesome. Thank you, Lance. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you, John.
All right, be well. Hey, before you go, if you like my ramblings and revelations and shares, I am now texting people directly to their phone. Just go to my website, theangrytherapist.com. If you want to subscribe, I'll be doing weekly text, 5 days a week, reminders, and also mindsets and exercises and challenges. And every week there will be a different theme, a different topic. So I hope to see you in your phone. And also, if you enjoyed this conversation, I hope you help me spread the dialogue and help other people by sharing it. You never know what people need to hear. So if it's helped you, I hope you can help me help others. Thank you. Hey, if you have a passion to help others and want to become a life coach, or you just want to acquire tools to change your own life, Learn more about our Catalyst Life Coaching Intensive. We are an evidence-based training program with an amazing, authentic, vibrant community, and we give lifetime support. Just go to my website, theangrytherapist.com, and click on Life Coach Training.